The sound of laughter still echoes in my mind, even 3 years later. Not the warm, inclusive kind that brings people together, but the sharp, cutting type that slices through your confidence like a blade. It was the kind of laughter that changed everything, that turned a single moment at a pool party into the catalyst for the most transformative journey of my life. What started as the most humiliating experience I'd ever endured became the foundation for exposing the biggest hypocrite in Austin's fitness scene. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Emma Rodriguez, and at 28 I thought I had my life reasonably figured out. I worked as a marketing coordinator for a small but growing digital agency in downtown Austin, lived in a cozy apartment in East Austin with my boyfriend Jake, and had recently started trying to build a social circle in a city that seemed to worship outdoor activities and perfectly sculpted bodies. Austin's culture of fitness intimidated me, but I was determined to find my place in it. I've always carried extra weight, not dramatically overweight, but enough that I felt self-conscious in fitted clothes, avoided full-body photos, and had developed an elaborate system of strategic positioning and clothing choices to minimize my insecurities. Growing up in San Antonio, I'd been the smart girl, the funny one, the reliable friend who always had the best ideas for group projects but never got asked to school dances. College hadn't changed much of that dynamic, and by the time Jake and I moved to Austin for his marketing career and my fresh start, I was ready to reinvent myself. Jake Martinez had been my anchor through everything. We'd met during our final semester at UT San Antonio, bonding over late-night study sessions and a shared love of terrible reality TV shows. He saw something in me that I struggled to see in myself, constantly encouraging me to put myself out there, to stop hiding behind self-deprecating humor and baggy clothes. When his agency offered him a position in Austin, he'd made it clear that he wanted me to come with him, not as a dependent trailing behind, but as his partner building a life together. Austin's fitness culture was unlike anything I'd experienced. Everywhere you looked, people were running along Lady Bird Lake, cycling through the city streets, or posting Instagram stories from trendy boutique fitness studios, with names like SoulCycle and Pure Barre. The city seemed to pulse with an energy that demanded physical perfection, and I felt increasingly out of place among the sea of athletic wear and protein smoothies. My first few months in Austin were spent trying to find ways to participate in this culture without exposing my insecurities. I bought expensive workout clothes that I hoped would make me look like I belonged, downloaded fitness apps that promised quick transformations, and researched gyms with the dedication of someone planning a military operation. The problem was that every gym I visited felt like a museum of physical perfection, where I was clearly an unwelcome tourist. Jake, bless him, tried to be supportive without being pushy. He'd suggest we take walks around Zilker Park, or try rock climbing at the local gym, always framing it as something fun we could do together rather than something I needed to do. His natural athleticism had never been something he flaunted, but in Austin, it became more apparent. He fit seamlessly into pickup basketball games and weekend hiking groups, and I could see him struggling with how to include me in activities that came naturally to him. The invitation to Tyler Brooks's housewarming party came through Jake's expanding network of colleagues and Austin connections. Tyler worked at a competing marketing agency, but the Austin business scene was small enough that professional rivalries took a backseat to social opportunities. The party was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in July, at Tyler's new house in West Austin, complete with a pool and outdoor space that screamed successful young professional. I spent an embarrassing amount of time preparing for that party. Not just the usual concerns about what to wear, but deeper anxieties about how to present myself in a social setting, where I knew fitness and appearance would be central topics of conversation. Austin summers demanded pool-appropriate attire, and I'd purchased a new swimsuit that I'd convinced myself was flattering, while simultaneously dreading having to wear it in public. The morning of the party, I stood in front of our bedroom mirror, wearing the black one-piece I'd chosen, a cover-up that provided strategic coverage, and a level of anxiety that felt disproportionate to a simple social gathering. Jake emerged from the bathroom, took one look at my expression, and immediately knew what was happening. "You look beautiful," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind so we were both reflected in the mirror. "And more importantly, you're smart, funny, and kind." That's what people will remember about today. I wanted to believe him, truly I did. But as we drove through Austin's west side, passing houses that seemed to grow larger and more expensive with each block, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach that accompanied any social situation where my appearance might be scrutinized. Tyler's house was everything I'd expected and more. A modern Austin home with floor-to-ceiling windows, an open-concept design that flowed seamlessly from indoor to outdoor spaces, and a backyard that looked like it belonged in a lifestyle magazine. The pool was the centerpiece, surrounded by comfortable seating areas and an outdoor kitchen that suggested Tyler took his entertaining seriously. By the time we arrived, the party was already in full swing. Groups of attractive 20-somethings clustered around the pool and patio areas, the men sporting the kind of effortless athletic builds that suggested regular gym attendance, the women wearing bikinis and cover-ups with the confidence of people who had never worried about strategic positioning for photos. Jake immediately fell into conversation with colleagues, his natural social ease, allowing him to navigate between groups while keeping me included in discussions about work, Austin restaurants, and weekend plans. For the first hour, I felt relatively comfortable. These were professional people having professional conversations, and I could contribute meaningfully to discussions about marketing strategies and local business trends. The shift happened gradually, as Austin's summer heat drove more people toward the pool, and conversations naturally turned to fitness routines, gym recommendations, and workout schedules. I found myself nodding along to discussions about boutique fitness classes, personal training sessions, and nutrition plans while contributing less and less to the actual conversation. That's when I first noticed Brad Thompson. He wasn't hard to notice. At 32, Brad had the kind of physique that served as walking advertisement for whatever fitness philosophy he followed. Tall, broad-shouldered, with defined muscles that suggested serious dedication to weightlifting, he moved through the party with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most physically impressive person in any room. Brad worked as a personal trainer at Iron Paradise Fitness, one of Austin's most exclusive gyms, and it quickly became apparent that he was something of a local fitness celebrity. People gathered around him as he discussed workout routines and nutrition strategies, hanging on his words with the reverence typically reserved for actual medical professionals. I learned later that Brad had built a significant social media following by posting workout videos and transformation photos, positioning himself as an expert on achieving optimal physical condition. His Instagram account, which I stalked obsessively in the weeks following the party, presented a carefully curated image of fitness perfection, complete with motivational quotes about discipline and dedication. As the afternoon progressed and the Texas heat intensified, more party guests migrated toward the pool. Jake suggested we change into our swimwear, and I reluctantly agreed, knowing that avoiding the pool entirely would draw more attention than participating. The poolside dynamic was different from the earlier professional conversations. Here, the focus shifted unmistakably toward physical appearance and fitness achievements. Brad seemed to be holding court near the shallow end, discussing his training philosophy with a group of admirers who treated every word like gospel. I positioned myself strategically on a lounge chair that offered both sun and easy conversation access, while allowing me to remain covered by my wrap. Jake, comfortable in his swim trunks, moved easily between the pool and our seating area, making sure I felt included without making my reluctance to get in the water obvious. For a while, my strategy worked. I contributed to conversations about Austin restaurants, upcoming festivals, and weekend plans, while avoiding any discussion of fitness routines or workout schedules. I was actually starting to relax when Tyler announced he was organizing a pool volleyball game. The enthusiasm for this idea was immediate and overwhelming. Teams were quickly forming, with Brad naturally emerging as one of the team captains. Jake looked at me with a questioning expression, clearly wanting to participate but unwilling to abandon me on the sidelines. "Go ahead," I told him, gesturing toward the pool. "I'll cheer from here." "Are you sure?" he asked, but I could see he wanted to join the game. "Absolutely. Someone needs to be the photographer anyway." As the game organized itself, I found myself in the perfect position to observe without participating. I pulled out my phone, genuinely planning to take photos of Jake and his new Austin friends, engaged in what appeared to be surprisingly competitive pool volleyball. The game was entertaining, with plenty of good-natured trash talk and increasingly elaborate attempts at impressive plays. Jake held his own among players who were clearly more athletically inclined, and I felt proud watching him integrate into this new social group. That's when Brad noticed me. I was focused on getting a good action shot of Jake spiking the ball when I became aware that the game had paused and several players were looking in my direction. Brad had climbed out of the pool and was walking toward my lounge chair with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Emma, right?" he said, water dripping from his impressively defined torso. "Jake's girlfriend?" I nodded, suddenly hyper-aware of how I must look compared to the bikini-clad women who'd been participating in the game. "We need another player to even out the teams," Brad continued, his voice carrying the authoritative tone of someone used to giving fitness instructions. "Come on, get in there." The invitation sounded friendly enough, but something in his expression made me uncomfortable. There was an evaluative quality to the way he was looking at me, as if he was making calculations about my physical capabilities. "Oh, I'm fine here," I said, attempting to keep my tone light. "I'm enjoying being the official photographer." "Come on," Brad pressed, his voice getting louder and drawing more attention from the other party guests. "Don't be shy. It's just a friendly game." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I felt the familiar panic that accompanied any situation where my physical limitations might become public. Pool volleyball required agility, coordination, and comfort with your body being on display, none of which were my strong suits. "Really, I'm good," I insisted, trying to maintain my smile while desperately wishing he would return to the game and forget about me. But Brad wasn't letting it go. If anything, my reluctance seemed to encourage him to press harder. "What's the problem?" he asked, his voice now carrying a note of challenge that made everyone within earshot turn to watch our interaction. "Afraid you might break a nail?" The comment drew some laughter from the pool area, the kind of nervous laughter that accompanies moments when social dynamics shift toward potential conflict. I felt heat rising in my cheeks that had nothing to do with the Austin sun. "I just prefer to watch," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. Brad moved closer to my lounge chair, positioning himself so that he was essentially looming over me while addressing not just me but the growing audience of party guests who had stopped their own conversations to watch our interaction. "Let me guess," he said, his voice taking on the tone of someone delivering what he clearly thought was playful teasing but felt increasingly like public harassment. "You're one of those people who thinks watching Netflix and eating takeout counts as self-care." More laughter. Louder this time, and I could see Jake starting to move toward us from the pool, clearly sensing that the interaction was moving in an uncomfortable direction. "Brad," someone called from the pool. "Leave her alone, man. Let's just play." But Brad was just getting started. He seemed energized by the attention, confident in his role as the fitness expert delivering tough love to someone who clearly needed it. "I'm just saying," he continued, his voice now carrying to every corner of the party, "if she spent half as much time in the gym as she does making excuses, she might actually be able to participate in normal activities." The words hit me like a physical blow. The laughter around the pool area became more pronounced, with some people looking away in embarrassment while others seemed entertained by the spectacle. "That's enough," Jake said, reaching our area and moving to stand between Brad and my chair. But Brad wasn't finished. Apparently emboldened by what he interpreted as a successful comedy performance, he decided to deliver his coup de grace. "Look, I'm not trying to be mean," he said, his voice taking on a mock sympathetic tone that somehow made everything worse. "I'm just saying that maybe if she cared about her health as much as she cares about her feelings, she wouldn't need to hide under that cover-up." The silence that followed was deafening. Every conversation around the pool had stopped, and I could feel dozens of pairs of eyes focused on me as I sat frozen in my lounge chair, wrapped in fabric that suddenly felt less like protection and more like a billboard advertising my insecurities. The humiliation was complete and overwhelming, not just because of Brad's words, but because of how public the moment had become. This wasn't a private insult that I could process and move past. This was a performance designed to entertain others at my expense. Jake's face had gone red with anger, and I could see him preparing to escalate the confrontation in my defense. But I couldn't handle the idea of this moment becoming even more dramatic, more public, more memorable for everyone present. "It's fine," I said quietly, standing up from the lounge chair on unsteady legs. "I think I'm going to get some air." I walked toward the house as quickly as I could manage while maintaining some dignity, leaving behind my pool bag and any pretense that I would be returning to the party. Behind me, I could hear Jake's voice raised in anger and Brad's defensive responses, but the specific words were lost in the rushing sound that filled my ears. Tyler's house had a front porch that offered privacy from the backyard festivities, and I collapsed onto a bench, finally allowing myself to process what had just happened. The worst part wasn't even Brad's cruel words, though they replayed in my mind with painful clarity. The worst part was the laughter, the way other people had been entertained by my humiliation, the knowledge that this moment would be remembered and probably retold. Jake found me there 20 minutes later, carrying my pool bag and wearing an expression of barely contained fury. "We're leaving," he said simply. I told Tyler we had to go, and I told Brad exactly what I thought of his performance. As we drove home in silence, I stared out the window at Austin's landscape of fitness studios and organic juice bars, feeling like an imposter in a city that demanded physical perfection. The humiliation burned in my chest, a constant reminder of how I'd been exposed and found wanting in front of people whose opinions suddenly mattered more than they should have. But underneath the embarrassment, something else was beginning to stir. Anger, yes, but also a stubborn determination that surprised me with its intensity. Brad Thompson had made a calculation about who I was and what I was capable of, and he'd done it publicly, confidently and cruelly. He was about to learn that he'd made a serious mistake. That night, lying in bed while Jake slept beside me, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to hide from Austin's fitness culture anymore, and I wasn't going to let Brad Thompson's opinion of my capabilities define my relationship with my own body. I was going to prove him wrong, but not in the way he expected. And when I was finished, everyone who'd laughed at his cruel jokes would understand exactly what kind of person they'd been entertaining. The war had begun, though Brad didn't know it yet. The Monday morning after the party, I called in sick to work. Not because I was physically ill, but because I couldn't face the possibility of running into anyone who might have heard about what happened at Tyler's house. Austin's young professional scene was smaller than it appeared, and gossip traveled fast through the interconnected networks of marketing agencies, tech startups, and fitness studios. Jake left for work that morning with obvious reluctance, offering to stay home with me, but I needed time alone to process what had happened and figure out my next move. I spent the first few hours alternating between replaying the humiliation in my mind and researching every fitness option Austin had to offer. By noon, I had created a spreadsheet. Yes, a spreadsheet. It contained every gym, fitness studio, personal trainer, and wellness center within a 15-mile radius of our apartment, complete with pricing, class schedules, customer reviews, and specialties. If I was going to transform myself, I was going to approach it with the same methodical planning I brought to marketing campaigns. The research revealed something interesting about Austin's fitness landscape. While the city was dominated by high-end boutique studios and exclusive gyms like Iron Paradise where Brad worked, there was an entire ecosystem of community-based fitness options that operated below the radar of the Instagram-worthy fitness influencer crowd. Community Strength Center caught my attention immediately. Located in East Austin, far from the polished West Side gyms, it advertised itself as welcoming to all fitness levels. The reviews mentioned a supportive environment, knowledgeable trainers who focused on proper form over appearance, and a diverse membership that included everyone from college students to seniors. More importantly, it was owned and operated by coach Rebecca Williams, a former competitive powerlifter who had transitioned into training after a career-ending injury. Her philosophy, based on what I could gather from the gym's website and social media presence, emphasized strength and capability over aesthetic goals. I drove to Community Strength Center that afternoon, not to join immediately, but to observe. The parking lot told a different story than the gleaming luxury cars I'd seen at other Austin fitness establishments. Pickup trucks, older sedans, and practical SUVs suggested a membership that prioritized function over status. Through the large windows that faced the street, I could see people of all ages and body types working out with an intensity and focus that impressed me. No one was posing for selfies or checking their appearance in mirrors between sets. This was a place where people came to work, not to be seen working. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, building up the courage to walk inside. Every excuse my brain could generate cycled through my consciousness. I wasn't dressed appropriately. I didn't know proper gym etiquette. I would embarrass myself in front of people who actually knew what they were doing. But then I remembered Brad's voice, the sound of laughter, the feeling of being reduced to an object of entertainment. The anger that had been simmering since Saturday night flared into determination. The interior of Community Strength Center was exactly what I'd hoped for. Clean but not fancy, with equipment that prioritized functionality over appearance. The walls were covered with achievement photos of members reaching personal goals, most of which focused on strength milestones rather than before and after physique comparisons. Coach Rebecca Williams turned out to be a woman in her early 40s with graying brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the kind of solid, powerful build that spoke of years dedicated to serious training. She was working with a client when I entered, demonstrating proper deadlift form with patience and attention to detail that immediately put me at ease. When she finished with her session, she approached me with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "First time here?" she asked, extending a calloused hand for a firm handshake. "Yes," I admitted. "I'm looking for somewhere to get started with fitness, but I'm pretty much a complete beginner." "Perfect," Rebecca said without hesitation. "Beginners are my favorite because you haven't developed bad habits yet. Want me to show you around?" The tour revealed a gym designed for serious training rather than social media content. Free weights dominated the space, with carefully maintained barbells, dumbbells, and plates that showed signs of heavy use. Cardio equipment was present but clearly secondary to the strength training focus. "What are your goals?" Rebecca asked as we completed the circuit. I hesitated, unsure how to articulate the complex mix of motivations that had brought me here. Revenge seemed like an inappropriate answer, but it was certainly part of the equation. "I want to get stronger," I finally said. "I want to prove to myself that I'm capable of more than people think." Rebecca studied me for a moment, and I had the feeling she was reading between the lines of my carefully diplomatic answer. "Someone gave you a reason to be here," she said. "It wasn't a question." I nodded, not trusting my voice to remain steady if I tried to explain. "Good," Rebecca said firmly. "The best transformations start with proving someone wrong. But here's what I'm going to tell you. The person you end up proving wrong might not be who you think it is right now." She handed me a membership packet and suggested I start with 3 sessions per week, focusing on basic movement patterns and building a foundation of strength before worrying about anything else. "No weight loss goals," she said as I filled out paperwork. "No appearance targets. We're going to focus on what your body can do, not what it looks like doing it." I signed up for a year-long membership that afternoon, along with twice-weekly personal training sessions with Rebecca. The financial commitment was significant, requiring me to adjust my budget and skip some of the social activities that had become part of my Austin lifestyle, but I was motivated by something deeper than casual interest in fitness. My first workout session 2 days later was humbling in ways I hadn't anticipated. Rebecca started me with bodyweight movements, basic stretches, and an assessment of my current capabilities that revealed just how much work lay ahead. I couldn't do a single proper push-up. My squat form was so poor that Rebecca had me practice the movement without any weight, focusing solely on learning how to move correctly. Simple exercises that I'd assumed anyone could perform exposed weaknesses and imbalances throughout my body. But Rebecca treated each limitation as a starting point rather than a failure. When I struggled to complete a plank for 30 seconds, she celebrated the progress from my initial 15-second attempt. When my squat depth improved slightly between sets, she pointed it out with genuine enthusiasm. "Strength isn't built in a day," she reminded me as I left that first session, sweaty and exhausted, but oddly energized. "But it is built every day you show up." The second week brought Sophie Chen into my life. Sophie was a regular at Community Strength Center, a software developer in her late 20s who had started training there after struggling with anxiety and depression following a difficult breakup. She had the kind of quiet strength that wasn't immediately obvious but became apparent when you watched her move through workouts with focused determination. Sophie approached me during my 4th training session, after observing me struggle through a particularly challenging set of assisted pull-ups. Those used to make me want to cry, she said with a sympathetic smile. Rebecca had me doing them for months before I could manage even one real pull-up. How long did it take? I asked, grateful for the encouragement. 8 months, Sophie said honestly. But the day I finally did it, I felt like I could conquer the world. Sophie became my unofficial workout partner, showing up for her sessions at the same time as mine and offering encouragement when exercises felt impossible. She had a way of normalizing struggle that made my own challenges feel less isolating. Everyone here started somewhere, she told me during my 3rd week. That guy over there deadlifting 400 pounds? When he started, he couldn't pick up the empty barbell correctly. Rebecca has photos. The community aspect of the gym revealed itself gradually. Unlike the competitive atmosphere I'd expected based on my limited exposure to Austin fitness culture, Community Strength Center fostered an environment where people genuinely supported each other's progress. Marcus Johnson, the gym owner, turned out to be a former college football player who had opened the facility after becoming frustrated with commercial gyms that prioritized membership sales over member success. He worked a day job in construction but spent his evenings at the gym, maintaining equipment and offering encouragement to anyone who needed it. "This place saved my life," he told me one evening as I finished a particularly difficult session. Not from anything dramatic, just from the slow death of thinking I wasn't worth investing in. The physical changes started small and took longer than I'd hoped. After 6 weeks of consistent training, I could complete a full push-up, hold a plank for 2 minutes, and squat with a 20-pound barbell. Rebecca had introduced deadlifts, which quickly became my favorite exercise, and I was beginning to understand why people developed passionate relationships with weightlifting. But the mental changes were more dramatic and immediate. The act of showing up to the gym 3 times per week, regardless of how I felt or what else was happening in my life, created a sense of accomplishment that extended beyond the workouts themselves. I was keeping a promise to myself, proving that I could commit to something difficult and follow through. Jake noticed the changes before I did. Not physical transformations, which were still subtle, but shifts in my confidence and energy levels. "You seem different," he said one evening as we prepared dinner together. "Stronger somehow." "I can deadlift 90 pounds now," I told him proudly. "That's amazing," he said, and I could tell he genuinely meant it. "But I meant mentally. You seem more sure of yourself." The social aspects of my new routine began to expand beyond the gym. Sophie introduced me to her circle of friends, many of whom were involved in Austin's tech scene and shared interests in hiking, rock climbing, and other outdoor activities that had previously intimidated me. Dr. Amanda Foster entered my life during my 3rd month of training. Rebecca had suggested I consult with a nutritionist, not for weight loss but to ensure I was fueling my workouts properly and supporting my strength-building goals. Amanda's approach to nutrition was refreshingly different from the restrictive diet culture that dominated social media. She focused on adequate protein intake, proper hydration, and eating enough to support an active lifestyle. "Your body is doing new work," she explained during our first consultation. "It needs more fuel, not less." Under Amanda's guidance, I learned to view food as fuel rather than the enemy. I started meal prepping, not to restrict calories, but to ensure I had proper nutrition available when my schedule got busy. The changes in my energy levels were dramatic. By month 4, I was squatting my body weight, deadlifting significantly more, and had developed visible muscle definition in my arms and shoulders. The physical changes were becoming apparent to people outside the gym, but more importantly, I was beginning to understand what Rebecca had meant about proving the wrong person wrong. I wasn't training to prove anything to Brad Thompson anymore. I was training to prove to myself that I was capable of far more than I'd ever imagined. The first real test of my newfound confidence came at a work happy hour in downtown Austin. Several colleagues had chosen a trendy rooftop bar that attracted the kind of young professional crowd where I might encounter people from Tyler's party. I almost canceled 3 times, but Sophie had convinced me that avoiding social situations would only reinforce the power of Brad's humiliation. "You're not the same person who went to that party," she reminded me. "Don't let him take up space in your head rent-free." The happy hour went well until I spotted Tyler across the crowded rooftop. He noticed me at the same time and approached with what appeared to be genuine remorse. "Emma," he said, extending his hand, I owe you an apology for what happened at my party. Brad was completely out of line. Thank you, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I appreciate that. For what it's worth, Tyler continued, several people called him out after you left. It wasn't cool, and everyone knew it. As Tyler returned to his group, I realized that the incident that had felt so publicly humiliating had actually reflected poorly on Brad, not on me. People had noticed his cruelty and found it unacceptable. The revelation was liberating. I'd spent months assuming that everyone at the party had agreed with Brad's assessment of me, when in reality many had been uncomfortable with his behavior. I stayed at the happy hour for another hour, engaging in conversations about work and Austin's social life, with a confidence I hadn't possessed before my training began. When colleagues suggested we try a new restaurant the following week, I agreed without the anxiety that would have previously accompanied such plans. Driving home that night, I reflected on how much had changed since that devastating Saturday afternoon. I was stronger, more confident, and surrounded by a community of people who valued effort and character over appearance. But I wasn't finished yet. I had bigger plans, goals that extended beyond personal transformation. Brad Thompson had used his platform as a fitness professional to publicly humiliate someone who was vulnerable, and I was beginning to understand that he probably wasn't the person he pretended to be. The research I'd begun into Austin's fitness industry had revealed interesting patterns. Personal trainers who built their reputations on social media often presented carefully curated versions of their lives that didn't necessarily reflect reality. The pressure to maintain a perfect image could lead to behaviors that contradicted the health and wellness they claimed to promote. I started following Brad's social media accounts, not out of masochistic curiosity but as research. His posts painted a picture of someone who maintained his physique through discipline, dedication, and superior knowledge of fitness principles. But there were inconsistencies in his content that suggested the reality might be more complex. Rebecca had taught me enough about proper training principles to recognize when something didn't align with evidence-based practices. Some of Brad's workout recommendations were questionable at best, and his nutrition advice often contradicted current research on healthy eating patterns. More concerning were the subtle signs that suggested his relationship with fitness might not be as healthy as he portrayed. The obsessive attention to detail in his food posts, the extreme training sessions that emphasized punishment over progress, and the way he discussed his body as a constant work in progress rather than something to be appreciated. I wasn't ready to act on my suspicions yet, but I was building a case. And when the time came to expose the truth about Brad Thompson, I would be prepared. The foundation was being laid for something bigger than personal revenge. I was discovering that the fitness industry had problems that extended far beyond one cruel personal trainer, and I was developing the knowledge and community connections to address them. My transformation was accelerating, but it wasn't the kind of transformation Brad would have expected. I wasn't becoming someone who fit into his narrow definition of acceptable. I was becoming someone who could challenge the entire system he represented. 6 months into my transformation, I deadlifted 200 pounds for the first time. The moment the barbell cleared the floor with that satisfying metallic clink, Rebecca let out a whoop that echoed through Community Strength Center, and Sophie started an impromptu celebration that drew attention from everyone in the gym. I stood there holding more weight than I'd ever imagined possible, feeling like I could conquer mountains. The physical changes were undeniable now. My shoulders had broadened, my arms showed defined muscle when I flexed, and I moved through the world with a confidence that transformed how people interacted with me. Colleagues at work commented on my energy levels, Jake marveled at how I could now keep up with his weekend hiking adventures, and strangers held eye contact when we spoke instead of looking past me. But the most significant transformation was happening in my understanding of Austin's fitness industry. Through Rebecca's network of trainers, nutritionists, and fitness professionals, I was learning about the darker underbelly of an industry that presented itself as promoting health and wellness. The revelation started during a conversation with Dr. Amanda Foster about the concerning trends she was seeing in her practice. Over our monthly check-in, she mentioned an increase in clients seeking help for eating disorders and exercise addiction, many of whom had been influenced by social media fitness personalities. The problem isn't fitness itself, Amanda explained as we reviewed my nutrition logs. It's the way some influencers promote unsustainable practices while claiming their healthy lifestyle choices. She showed me research about the prevalence of disordered eating behaviors among fitness influencers, the use of performance-enhancing substances that weren't disclosed to followers, and the psychological toll of maintaining an image of physical perfection for public consumption. Many of these people are struggling with the same body image issues as their clients, Amanda said, but they've built businesses around hiding those struggles. The conversation planted seeds of suspicion about Brad Thompson that grew stronger as I continued observing his social media presence. His posts had become more frequent and more extreme since the party incident, as if he was doubling down on his image as Austin's premier fitness authority. But there were cracks in the facade that became more apparent as my own knowledge expanded. His form in workout videos sometimes demonstrated the exact mistakes Rebecca had taught me to avoid. His meal posts showed portion sizes that seemed inadequate for someone maintaining his level of muscle mass naturally. Most telling were the subtle signs of the obsessive behaviors Amanda had described. Marcus Johnson provided another piece of the puzzle during one of our evening conversations at Community Strength Center. As someone who had worked in Austin's fitness scene for over a decade, he had insights into the business practices and personal struggles of local trainers. Iron Paradise has a reputation for burning through trainers, Marcus mentioned while we cleaned equipment together. High-pressure environment, unrealistic expectations for client results, and a culture that prioritizes appearance over actual health outcomes. He'd heard rumors about some of the practices at the upscale gym, including trainers who felt pressured to maintain their physiques through methods they wouldn't recommend to clients, and management that turned a blind eye to concerning behaviors as long as trainers brought in revenue. The guys who last there long-term usually have something else going on, Marcus said carefully. Either family money that lets them not depend on the job, or they've found ways to maintain their image that aren't exactly honest. I filed this information away as I continued building my own reputation in Austin's fitness community. Rebecca had started inviting me to assist with beginner workshops at Community Strength Center, where I helped new members learn basic movements and shared my own transformation story. Teaching others revealed how much I'd learned over the past months. I could identify common form mistakes, explain the reasoning behind different exercise progressions, and most importantly, create an environment where people felt safe to ask questions and make mistakes. The workshops attracted people from across Austin's socioeconomic spectrum, many of whom had been intimidated by the city's high-end fitness culture. Single mothers looking for affordable ways to stay healthy, college students who couldn't afford boutique studio memberships, older adults who felt excluded from youth-oriented gyms. Each person who found success at Community Strength Center reinforced my growing conviction that the fitness industry's focus on appearance and exclusivity was not only wrong, but actively harmful to public health. The first direct confrontation with Brad happened at Whole Foods in the Domain, Austin's upscale shopping center. I was picking up ingredients for the meal prep recipes Amanda had taught me when I spotted him in the supplement aisle, filling a cart with products that seemed excessive for someone promoting natural fitness methods. He noticed me at the same time, and I watched his expression shift from recognition to calculation, as he processed how different I looked from the woman he'd humiliated at Tyler's party. "Emma, right?" he said, approaching with the confident smile that I now recognized as his professional persona. "Wow, you look great. Finally decided to take my advice?" The casual assumption that my transformation was somehow his doing ignited a flash of anger that I carefully controlled. "Actually, I found a trainer who believes in building people up instead of tearing them down," I replied, keeping my voice level despite the satisfaction I felt at his momentary confusion. "Oh, where are you training?" Brad asked, clearly expecting me to name one of Austin's trendy studios where he could claim some indirect influence over my progress. "Community Strength Center," I said, watching his expression shift to poorly concealed disdain. "That old-school powerlifting place?" Brad's tone carried the dismissive quality I remembered from the party. "Well, I guess it worked out for you, but you could probably make even more progress with proper guidance." He handed me one of his business cards, a glossy piece of marketing that advertised personal training, nutrition coaching, and lifestyle transformation services. "I'm always looking for success stories to feature on my social media," he continued. Your transformation could be really inspiring to my followers." The audacity was breathtaking. The same person who had publicly humiliated me for my appearance now wanted to claim credit for my progress and use my story to promote his business. "Thanks, but I'm happy with my current situation," I said, handing the card back without looking at it. Brad's professional smile faltered slightly, replaced by something sharper that reminded me of his behavior at the party. "You know, there's only so far you can go without proper guidance," he said. "Community programs are fine for beginners, but if you really want to reach your potential, you need someone with advanced knowledge." I looked at his cart full of expensive supplements, then at his carefully styled appearance that required constant maintenance, and felt a wave of pity for someone so insecure that he needed to diminish others to feel superior. "I think I'm doing just fine," I said, turning to continue my shopping. As I walked away, I heard him mutter something about people not knowing what they don't know, but I didn't turn around. The encounter had revealed something important about Brad's character and given me insight into how he operated in social situations. The incident at Whole Foods sparked a deeper investigation into Brad's background and business practices. Using the research skills I'd developed in marketing, I began examining his online presence with forensic attention to detail. His Instagram account told a carefully constructed story of fitness perfection, but inconsistencies emerged when I analyzed posts over time. Photos that supposedly showed his current physique sometimes contained subtle differences in lighting, posing, and even background details that suggested they weren't taken when claimed. More concerning were the testimonials from clients that seemed to follow suspicious patterns. Many of the transformation photos showed dramatic changes that would be difficult to achieve naturally in the timeframes claimed, and several of the supposed client accounts had limited posting history beyond their testimonial content. Rebecca helped me understand what I was seeing when I shared my observations with her. Social media has created enormous pressure for trainers to show constant success stories, she explained. Some handle that pressure better than others. She'd encountered trainers who manipulated client photos, exaggerated time frames for transformations, and even hired models to pose as successful clients. "The problem is that unrealistic expectations hurt everyone," Rebecca said. "Real clients get discouraged when they can't replicate fake results, and trainers burn out trying to maintain impossible standards." Through Sophie's connections in Austin's tech industry, I learned about tools and techniques used to manipulate digital content, photo editing applications that could alter body shapes, lighting techniques that created the illusion of more dramatic muscle definition, and even the use of temporary cosmetic procedures that enhanced appearance for photo shoots. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Brad's online presence showed signs of digital manipulation and potentially fraudulent client testimonials. His supplement recommendations included products with questionable scientific support and potentially harmful side effects. Most damning was the disconnect between his public advocacy for natural fitness methods and the extreme measures his physique maintenance seemed to require. But I needed more than suspicions to take action. I needed proof. And I needed a platform that would amplify the truth effectively. The opportunity came through an unexpected source. Jake's marketing agency had been approached by Austin Fitness magazine to help launch a digital platform highlighting local fitness professionals and their methodologies. The project aimed to create authentic content that would help Austin residents make informed decisions about their health and fitness choices. When Jake mentioned the project during dinner one evening, I immediately saw the potential. "They're looking for people to profile trainers and gyms," Jake explained. "The goal is to show the real stories behind successful fitness transformations, not just the glossy social media versions." I volunteered to contribute to the project, positioning myself as someone who could provide the perspective of a successful client while also having enough industry knowledge to ask informed questions. The magazine's editor, Patricia Nguyen, was enthusiastic about having someone with my background and transformation story involved in the content creation. "We want to show people what authentic fitness culture looks like," Patricia explained during our first meeting. "Too much of what people see online is manufactured for marketing purposes." I proposed a series of profiles comparing different approaches to fitness training, with a focus on how various methodologies affected real people's lives. Patricia approved the concept and gave me considerable editorial freedom to choose subjects and develop content. Community Strength Center was an obvious choice for the first profile, showcasing Rebecca's evidence-based approach and the inclusive culture that had transformed my relationship with fitness. The article would highlight real client success stories, explain the science behind effective strength training, and demonstrate how supportive environments enhanced long-term results. For contrast, I wanted to profile one of Austin's high-end fitness establishments, ideally one that represented the glossy, social media-driven approach that dominated the industry's public image. Iron Paradise Fitness was the perfect counterpoint, and Brad Thompson was their most visible representative. When I contacted Iron Paradise to request an interview, I presented myself as a fitness journalist working on a comprehensive overview of Austin's training options. I emphasized my own transformation story and my goal of helping readers make informed decisions about their fitness investments. Brad agreed to the interview immediately, clearly viewing it as an opportunity for positive publicity. He suggested we meet at Iron Paradise during peak hours so I could see the facility in action and understand what set his approach apart from lower-tier options. The gym was everything I expected: polished surfaces, top-of-the-line equipment, and a clientele that looked like they'd been selected for their photogenic qualities. The atmosphere was less community-focused than competitive, with members appearing more concerned about their appearance during workouts than their actual exercise performance. Brad had prepared for our interview with the thoroughness of someone accustomed to managing his public image. He'd arranged for photos to be taken during our conversation, selected clients to provide testimonials on camera, and prepared talking points that emphasized his unique qualifications and superior methodology. The interview itself revealed more than he intended. When I asked detailed questions about his training philosophy, inconsistencies emerged between his stated beliefs and his actual practices. His nutrition recommendations contradicted current research in several areas, and his exercise programming showed gaps that surprised me, given his confident presentation. Most telling were his responses to questions about client safety and long-term health outcomes. Brad consistently redirected conversations toward aesthetic results and short-term transformations, avoiding discussions of sustainable lifestyle changes or injury prevention. When I asked about his own training history and the methods he used to maintain his physique, his answers became notably vague. He cited generic principles about consistency and dedication, while avoiding specific details about his programming, nutrition protocols, or supplement use. The photo session provided additional insights. Brad's behavior during the shoot revealed an obsessive attention to angles, lighting, and positioning that suggested significant insecurity about his appearance. Between shots, he checked his reflection constantly and made minute adjustments to his posture and facial expressions. I left Iron Paradise with hours of interview footage, extensive notes, and a growing conviction that Brad Thompson was not the fitness authority he claimed to be. But I still needed the final piece of evidence that would expose the truth about his methods and reveal the reality behind his carefully constructed image. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Amanda Foster called me 3 weeks after the Iron Paradise interview with information that changed everything. "I had a consultation today that I think you should know about," she said, her voice careful and professional. "I can't share details due to confidentiality, but I can tell you that someone you've mentioned before came to see me about some concerning issues related to their fitness practices." The implication was clear, though Amanda couldn't state it directly. Brad Thompson had sought help for problems related to his extreme approach to physique maintenance, and those problems were serious enough to require professional intervention. "If you're planning to write about industry practices that could be harmful," Amanda continued, "this would be a good time to focus on the importance of sustainable, health-centered approaches to fitness." I thanked Amanda and immediately began planning the final phase of my investigation. I had enough information to expose Brad's fraudulent practices and questionable methods, but I wanted to do more than simply tear down one problematic trainer. I wanted to demonstrate what authentic fitness culture could look like, and provide people with alternatives to the toxic perfectionism that dominated social media. The article one was preparing would show the stark contrast between evidence-based, community-centered fitness and the manufactured perfection of influencer culture. It would feature real transformations achieved through sustainable methods, expert insights into healthy training practices, and a critical examination of the marketing tactics used to manipulate vulnerable people. Most importantly, it would reveal the truth about Brad Thompson's perfect lifestyle and show readers what lay behind the carefully curated image he presented to the world. The war I declared 6 months earlier was about to reach its climax, but the victory would be bigger than personal revenge. It would be a step toward transforming how people thought about fitness, health, and the courage to challenge systems that profited from their insecurities. The breakthrough moment came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, when I couldn't sleep and found myself scrolling through months of Brad's social media content with the obsessive focus of a detective pursuing a cold case. I had developed a system for analyzing his posts, looking for patterns, inconsistencies, and clues that might reveal the truth behind his carefully crafted image. That's when I noticed something that made my heart race with excitement and vindication. Hidden in plain sight, buried among hundreds of posts about discipline and natural transformation, were subtle indicators that Brad Thompson's perfect physique was maintained through methods he would never admit to his followers. The evidence was in the details that most people wouldn't notice. Photo timestamps that didn't align with his claimed workout schedule. Subtle changes in his appearance that suggested cycles of enhancement and recovery. Most damning were the carefully cropped photos that excluded certain details from view, and the strategic use of lighting and angles that concealed what he didn't want people to see. But the real revelation came from cross-referencing his social media activity with information I'd gathered from my expanding network in Austin's fitness community. Through conversations with other trainers, nutritionists, and industry insiders, I had learned about a shadowy ecosystem of practitioners who helped fitness influencers maintain their images through methods that contradicted everything they preached publicly. Dr. Amanda Foster had given me the final piece of the puzzle without violating her professional ethics. While she couldn't discuss specific patients, she had shared general information about the concerning trends she was seeing in her practice. Young fitness professionals seeking help for eating disorders, exercise addiction, and the psychological toll of maintaining an impossible image for public consumption. The pattern that emerged was devastating. Brad Thompson, the man who had humiliated me for my weight and preached about natural transformation, was struggling with his own relationship with food, exercise, and body image. His perfect physique was maintained through extreme measures that he would never recommend to others because he knew they were unsustainable and potentially dangerous. But I needed more than circumstantial evidence for the exposé I was planning. I needed documentation, testimony, and irrefutable proof that would stand up to scrutiny and potential legal challenges. The opportunity came through Marcus Johnson, who had developed an extensive network of contacts throughout Austin's fitness industry during his years of gym ownership. Marcus understood the darker aspects of the business and had seen too many talented trainers destroy their health pursuing an image of perfection for social media. "There's someone you should meet," Marcus told me one evening as we finished closing Community Strength Center. Dr. Jonathan Martinez runs a clinic that specializes in helping fitness professionals recover from the damage they've done to themselves, chasing impossible standards. Dr. Martinez practiced in a discreet medical office in South Austin, far from the trendy fitness studios and high-end gyms where his clients worked. His specialty was treating the hidden epidemic of health problems that plagued people whose careers depended on maintaining a perfect physical appearance. When I contacted Dr. Martinez's office, explaining my role as a fitness journalist investigating industry practices, he agreed to speak with me about the general trends he was seeing in his practice. The conversation was eye-opening and deeply disturbing. Social media has created unprecedented pressure for fitness professionals to maintain an image of perfection, Dr. Martinez explained during our meeting. Many of them develop deeply problematic relationships with food, exercise, and their own bodies in pursuit of content that will drive engagement. He described patterns he'd observed among clients who worked as personal trainers, fitness influencers, and gym employees. Extreme dietary restrictions that led to binge-purge cycles, compulsive exercise that caused injuries, and burnout. The use of substances and procedures to maintain muscle mass and low body fat percentages that were neither sustainable nor healthy. The irony is that many of these people got into fitness because they genuinely wanted to help others live healthier lives, Dr. Martinez continued. But the pressure to present a perfect image can lead them down paths that contradict everything they believe about health and wellness. He couldn't discuss specific patients, but he could share general information about the types of treatment he provided and the concerning trends he was seeing in Austin's fitness community. Young male trainers are particularly vulnerable. he noted. The pressure to maintain an extremely lean, muscular physique year-round can lead to disordered eating patterns and exercise addiction that they often don't recognize as problematic. I left Dr. Martinez's office with a deeper understanding of the psychological toll that influencer culture was taking on the people who participated in it. Brad Thompson wasn't just a villain who had humiliated me at a party. He was someone whose career had led him down a destructive path that was ultimately hurting both him and the people who looked up to him. But understanding his struggles didn't diminish my determination to expose the truth. If anything, it reinforced my conviction that the fitness industry's toxic culture needed to be challenged and reformed. The article one was developing for Austin Fitness magazine had evolved into something much more comprehensive than a simple comparison of training methodologies. It was becoming an investigation into the disconnect between what fitness influencers promoted publicly and how they actually lived their lives. Patricia Nguyen was supportive of the expanded scope, especially as I shared some of my preliminary findings with her. "This is exactly the kind of authentic journalism our readers need," she said during one of our editorial meetings. "People are spending thousands of dollars on fitness programs and supplements based on marketing that may not reflect reality." We decided to structure the article as a comprehensive examination of Austin's fitness culture, featuring multiple perspectives and methodologies, while highlighting the importance of evidence-based practices and sustainable approaches to health. Community Strength Center would be featured prominently, showcasing the positive outcomes that resulted from focusing on strength, capability, and community rather than appearance. I had documented transformation stories from members who had achieved remarkable results through consistent, sustainable practices guided by qualified professionals. Iron Paradise Fitness would serve as a counterpoint, representing the high-end, image-focused approach that dominated social media. But rather than simply criticizing their methods, I plan to examine the gap between their marketing claims and the actual experiences of clients and staff. The investigation required months of additional research, interviews, and fact-checking. I spoke with former Iron Paradise employees who described the pressure to maintain a certain appearance and the concerning practices they'd observed among staff members. Current and former clients shared stories about unrealistic expectations, unsafe training methods, and the emotional toll of pursuing transformation goals that were neither healthy nor sustainable. Most importantly, I gathered evidence about Brad Thompson's actual training and nutrition practices through sources who had worked with him directly. The picture that emerged was radically different from his public persona. Brad's perfect physique was maintained through extreme dietary restriction that bordered on disordered eating. His training schedule was compulsive and excessive, often involving multiple sessions per day that left little time for recovery. He used supplements and practices that he would never recommend to clients because he knew they were potentially harmful. The most damaging revelation was that Brad regularly sought help from other professionals to maintain his image, including the very nutritionist and therapist he publicly dismissed as unnecessary for people with proper discipline. His real workout partner wasn't another fitness enthusiast or professional athlete. It was Dr. Jonathan Martinez, the specialist who treated fitness professionals struggling with the psychological and physical toll of maintaining an impossible image. Brad had been seeing Dr. Martinez for over a year, seeking treatment for exercise addiction, disordered eating, and the anxiety that resulted from constantly managing his public image. The confident, disciplined fitness authority that people saw on social media was a carefully constructed performance that masked serious health struggles. I verified this information through multiple sources, including medical professionals who could speak generally about treating fitness industry clients, former colleagues who had witnessed Brad's concerning behaviors, and documentation that showed patterns of treatment and recovery that aligned with the timeline of his social media activity. The article was scheduled to publish in 3 weeks, timed to coincide with Austin Fitness magazine's special issue on sustainable health practices. But before publication, I decided that Brad deserved an opportunity to respond to the allegations and perhaps even acknowledge the problems with the culture he had helped create. I sent a detailed email to Brad's business account, outlining the major points of my investigation and requesting an interview where he could provide his perspective on the issues I planned to address. I emphasized that my goal was not personal attack but rather an examination of industry practices that might be harmful to both professionals and clients. His response came within hours, and it was everything I expected and more. The email began with threats about defamation and lawsuits, escalated to personal attacks that revealed how little he had actually changed since the pool party incident, and concluded with an ultimatum demanding that I abandon the article or face legal consequences. But buried in the angry rhetoric was something more revealing. Brad's response included defensive explanations for some of the practices I'd identified, inadvertently confirming details that I hadn't been completely certain about. His attempt to justify his behavior provided additional evidence for the very points I was trying to make. More importantly, his reaction revealed that he had learned nothing from his own struggles with the pressures of maintaining a perfect image. Instead of using his experience to help others avoid similar problems, he was doubling down on the harmful culture that had damaged his own health. I forwarded Brad's threatening email to Patricia Nguyen and Austin Fitness Magazine's legal team, who confirmed that my investigation was legally sound and that publication could proceed as planned. But I wasn't satisfied with simply exposing Brad's hypocrisy in print. I wanted to confront him directly, to give him one final opportunity to acknowledge the harm his behavior had caused, and perhaps even join efforts to reform the industry. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Sophie mentioned that Iron Paradise was hosting a grand reopening event to showcase their renovated facility and new training programs. The event would feature demonstrations, seminars, and networking opportunities for Austin's fitness community. It was the perfect venue for a public confrontation that would force Brad to address his contradictions in front of the very audience he had been deceiving. I registered for the event using my credentials as a fitness journalist, planning to attend with a camera crew that Patricia had arranged to document the confrontation for potential follow-up content. The morning of the event, I felt the same mixture of nervousness and determination that had accompanied my first day at Community Strength Center. But this time, I wasn't the insecure woman who had been humiliated at a pool party. I was someone who had transformed not just her body, but her understanding of what real strength looked like. I arrived at Iron Paradise wearing professional attire that showcased the muscle I had built over the past year, carrying myself with the confidence that came from knowing I had truth on my side. The renovated facility was impressive, all gleaming surfaces and high-tech equipment designed to create an atmosphere of luxury and exclusivity. Brad was holding court in the main training area, surrounded by potential clients and local media representatives who were covering the reopening. He looked exactly as polished and confident as ever, delivering practiced talking points about the superiority of his training methods and the transformative power of proper guidance. I positioned myself at the edge of the crowd, waiting for the right moment to ask the questions that would reveal the truth about his methods and force him to address the contradictions between his public image and private struggles. The moment came when Brad opened the floor for questions from the assembled media representatives. I raised my hand and was recognized, introducing myself as a journalist working on a comprehensive overview of Austin's fitness industry. "Mr. Thompson," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the space, "your social media content emphasizes natural transformation through discipline and consistency. Can you explain how that philosophy aligns with your own use of extreme dietary restriction and compulsive exercise patterns that required professional intervention?" The question landed like a physical blow. Brad's confident expression faltered, replaced by the same calculation I had seen in his eyes at Tyler's party and during our encounter at Whole Foods. "I'm sorry, who are you again?" he asked, stalling for time while trying to process how I had obtained information about his private medical treatment. "Emma Rodriguez," I said clearly, making sure everyone in the area could hear. "We met at Tyler Brooks's party about a year ago, where you publicly humiliated me for my weight and suggested I didn't care about my health." The recognition dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by panic, as he realized that the woman he had dismissed and mocked had somehow gained access to information that could destroy his carefully constructed image. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," Brad said, his professional smile returning but failing to reach his eyes. "I don't recall any specific incident, and I certainly wouldn't make personal comments about someone's appearance." The lie was so blatant that several people in the crowd exchanged glances, sensing that something significant was happening but not yet understanding the full context. "Perhaps this will help refresh your memory," I said, pulling out my phone and playing a recording I had made of Tyler's account of the party incident, including his direct quotes of Brad's cruel comments about my weight and health. The recording played clearly through the space, capturing not just Brad's words but the dismissive tone and cruel laughter that had accompanied them. As the audio concluded, the tension in the room was palpable. Brad's face had gone red, but whether from embarrassment or anger was unclear. "That was taken out of context," he said, his voice rising slightly. "Sometimes tough love is necessary to motivate people to make positive changes." "Interesting perspective," I replied, my tone remaining calm and professional. "Can you explain how your tough love approach aligns with your own treatment for exercise addiction and disordered eating with Dr. Jonathan Martinez?" The mention of his therapist's name caused Brad to take a visible step backward, his confident posture crumbling as he realized the extent of my knowledge about his private struggles. "That's confidential medical information," he stammered. "You have no right to discuss my private health care." "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "Just as I had a right to seek treatment and support for the psychological damage caused by your public humiliation, rather than being mocked for my appearance by someone whose own relationship with fitness was deeply problematic." The crowd around us had grown silent, sensing that they were witnessing something more significant than a simple disagreement between a trainer and a journalist. "The article I'm publishing next week will examine the gap between what fitness influencers promote publicly and how they actually live their lives," I continued. "It will feature your treatment history, your extreme dietary practices, and the professional help you've sought for the very issues you claim others can solve through simple discipline." Brad looked desperately around the room, seeking support from colleagues or clients, but found only curious and concerned faces staring back at him. "This is harassment," he said finally, his voice lacking the conviction that had characterized his earlier presentations. "I'm going to call security." "That's your choice," I said, maintaining my professional demeanor. "But the truth is going to be published regardless. The only question is whether you want to use this opportunity to acknowledge the harm your behavior has caused and perhaps help others avoid the destructive path you've followed." The moment stretched between us, filled with the weight of everything that had happened since that afternoon at Tyler's party. Brad Thompson had the chance to show growth, to acknowledge his mistakes, and to use his platform to promote healthier approaches to fitness and body image. Instead, he chose to double down on the very attitudes and behaviors that had led to his own struggles and caused harm to others. "Get out," he said, pointing toward the exit. "This is a private event, and you're not welcome here." As security approached, I gathered my materials and prepared to leave, but not before delivering my final statement to the crowd that had witnessed our confrontation. "The fitness industry has the power to help people build healthier, stronger lives," I said, addressing the room rather than Brad specifically. "But only if we're honest about what sustainable health actually looks like, and stop promoting practices that are neither healthy nor sustainable." I walked toward the exit with my head held high, surrounded by whispered conversations and questioning looks from people who were beginning to understand that they had just witnessed the exposure of someone whose public image was fundamentally fraudulent. Behind me, I could hear Brad attempting to regain control of the situation, trying to dismiss what had just happened as a personal attack from someone with a grudge. But the damage was done, and everyone present had seen him crumble under questioning about his actual practices. The real victory wasn't just exposing Brad Thompson's hypocrisy. It was demonstrating that the culture of exclusivity and perfection he represented could be challenged by people who were willing to do the work of building genuine strength and authentic community. My transformation was complete, but it looked nothing like what Brad would have expected. I hadn't become someone who fit into his narrow definition of acceptable. I had become someone who could challenge the entire system he represented and offer people a better alternative. The article published on a Thursday morning, and by noon my phone hadn't stopped ringing. Austin Fitness Magazine's website had crashed twice from the traffic, and Patricia was fielding interview requests from local news stations, podcasts, and national publications that wanted to explore the broader implications of my investigation. Fitness influencer fraud, the hidden truth behind Austin's perfect bodies, had struck a nerve that extended far beyond our local fitness community. The piece detailed not just Brad Thompson's deceptive practices, but the systemic problems within an industry that prioritized appearance over health and profit over people's well-being. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of publication, former Iron Paradise clients were sharing their own stories of unrealistic expectations, unsafe training methods, and the emotional damage caused by pursuing impossible standards. Other fitness professionals came forward with similar experiences, describing the pressure they felt to maintain perfect images for social media while struggling with their own health issues. Dr. Jonathan Martinez called me personally to express his support for the article and to offer his professional perspective on the broader issues it raised. "You've started a conversation that this industry desperately needed," he said. "Too many people have been suffering in silence because they thought they were the only ones struggling with these pressures." The most surprising response came from Iron Paradise's management. Rather than defending Brad or threatening legal action, they released a statement announcing his immediate termination and outlining new policies designed to ensure their trainers promoted sustainable, health-focused approaches to fitness. "We were unaware of the concerning practices described in Ms. Rodriguez's investigation," the statement read. "Iron Paradise is committed to the genuine health and well-being of our members, and we cannot tolerate any behavior that contradicts those values." Marcus Johnson was grinning from ear to ear when I arrived at Community Strength Center that evening. "Have you seen the news?" he asked, gesturing toward his computer screen. 3 more boutique studios announced new policies about authentic marketing practices, and the Austin Board of Personal Trainers is launching an investigation into certification requirements. The ripple effects were growing larger by the day. Fitness professionals across the city were reevaluating their practices, social media policies, and the messages they sent to clients about health and transformation. But the most meaningful response came from the people whose lives had been touched by the toxic culture I'd exposed. Messages poured in from individuals who had struggled with body image issues, eating disorders, and exercise addiction after following advice from fitness influencers who weren't practicing what they preached. Rebecca found me in the gym's small office, responding to emails from people who wanted to share their stories and express gratitude for bringing these issues to light. "You know what this means, don't you?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "That Brad Thompson's career as a fitness influencer is over?" I suggested. "That's just the beginning," Rebecca said with a smile. "You've given people permission to question the entire system, to demand better from the professionals they trust with their health, to recognize that real transformation takes time, effort, and sustainable practices." She was right. The conversation had expanded beyond Brad's individual case to encompass the broader problems within an industry that had lost sight of its fundamental purpose. People were beginning to understand that the perfect bodies they saw on social media often came at a terrible cost to the people who possessed them. Sophie stopped by later that evening with a bottle of champagne and news that made the day even more satisfying. "Tyler Brooks called me," she said, popping the cork with theatrical flair. "He wanted to apologize for what happened at his party and to ask if you'd be interested in speaking at a wellness seminar his company is organizing." The irony was delicious. The same party where I'd been humiliated for my appearance had led to a transformation that now positioned me as an expert on authentic wellness practices. "Are you going to do it?" Sophie asked, as we sat on my apartment balcony, watching the Austin skyline light up as the sun set. "I think I am," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "But not to talk about my personal transformation. To talk about how we can build fitness communities that actually support people instead of tearing them down." Jake joined us an hour later, carrying takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and wearing the expression of someone who was both proud and slightly overwhelmed by the attention his girlfriend was receiving. "Channel 8 wants to do a feature story," he reported, settling onto the balcony furniture we'd assembled during my early days of strength training. "And someone from a publishing company called about writing a book." The opportunities were exciting, but also somewhat surreal. A year ago, I'd been hiding from Austin's fitness culture, convinced that I didn't belong in a city that seemed to worship physical perfection. Now I was being positioned as a leader in the movement to reform that culture. The real test of my impact came the following week, when Dr. Amanda Foster asked me to speak at a conference for healthcare professionals about the intersection of fitness culture and mental health. "Your investigation has opened doors for conversations we've needed to have for years," she explained during our preparation meeting. Healthcare providers are seeing the consequences of toxic fitness culture in their practices, but many didn't know how to address the root causes. The conference audience included physicians, therapists, nutritionists, and other professionals who worked with people struggling with body image issues, eating disorders, and exercise addiction. Many had clients whose problems stemmed from attempting to replicate the extreme practices promoted by fitness influencers. My presentation focused on the disconnect between what people saw on social media and the reality of sustainable health practices. I shared my own journey, but more importantly, I outlined the red flags that healthcare providers should watch for when clients were following potentially harmful fitness advice. The person who humiliated me at a party thought he was delivering tough love, I told the audience. But tough love that comes from someone who's struggling with their own disordered relationship with food and exercise isn't love at all, it's projection. During the question and answer session, a therapist raised her hand and asked about the broader implications of my investigation. Do you think this kind of accountability journalism can actually change industry practices? She asked. I think it's already happening, I replied. But sustainable change requires more than just exposing bad actors. We need to actively promote better alternatives and support the professionals who are doing good work. That comment led to the most significant development of my entire journey. Dr. Martinez approached me after the presentation with a proposal that would expand my impact far beyond a single magazine article. What would you think about starting a certification program for fitness professionals? He asked. Something that emphasizes mental health awareness, sustainable practices, and ethical marketing? The idea was ambitious and exciting. A certification program that would teach fitness professionals not just exercise science and nutrition principles, but also how to recognize signs of disordered eating, how to promote body-positive approaches to health, and how to market their services without exploiting people's insecurities. We could partner with healthcare providers, establish gyms like Community Strength Center, and educational institutions, Dr. Martinez continued. Create a new standard for what it means to be a fitness professional. I agreed to explore the concept, and within months, we had developed a comprehensive curriculum that attracted interest from fitness professionals across Texas and beyond. The program emphasized evidence-based practices, ethical business methods, and the importance of treating clients as whole people rather than collections of body parts to be optimized. Community Strength Center became the pilot location for the certification program, with Rebecca serving as the primary instructor for practical training components. The first cohort of students included former Iron Paradise employees who wanted to rebuild their careers around healthier principles, recent graduates who were committed to ethical practices from the start, and established trainers who recognized the need to update their approaches. The program's success attracted attention from national fitness organizations and led to speaking opportunities at conferences across the country. But the most satisfying moments came from individual success stories, like the former fitness influencer who used our principles to rebuild her career around sustainable health practices, or the gym owner who transformed his facility's culture after completing our training. Brad Thompson, meanwhile, had largely disappeared from Austin's fitness scene. Iron Paradise's termination had effectively ended his career as a high-profile trainer, and his social media accounts had gone dormant after facing constant scrutiny from people who had learned to recognize the warning signs of problematic practices. I heard through Marcus that Brad had eventually sought more comprehensive treatment for his eating disorder and exercise addiction, working with Dr. Martinez and other specialists to address the issues that had driven his harmful behavior. While I felt no obligation to forgive him for the humiliation he'd caused me, I was glad to know that he was getting the help he needed. The true measure of my transformation became clear during the one-year anniversary celebration of my article's publication. Austin Fitness Magazine hosted an event to recognize the changes that had occurred in the local fitness community, and I was invited to give the keynote address. The venue was the same hotel where Brad had held his Iron Paradise reopening event, but the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. Instead of polished perfection and competitive posturing, the room was filled with fitness professionals who were committed to authentic health promotion and sustainable practices. Rebecca introduced me with words that captured the journey better than I could have myself. Emma Rodriguez came to Community Strength Center as someone who had been told she didn't belong in fitness culture, she said. She's leaving us tonight as someone who has fundamentally changed what that culture looks like. My speech focused on the lessons I'd learned throughout the process, both about the fitness industry and about my own capacity for growth and change. The person who mocked my weight at a party thought he was exposing my weakness, I told the audience. But what he actually did was reveal his own. And in trying to prove him wrong, I discovered that the whole system he represented was built on deception and insecurity. I talked about the importance of building fitness communities that celebrated effort over results, progress over perfection, and sustainability over quick fixes. I shared stories from the certification program participants who were implementing these principles in their own practices and seeing remarkable results with their clients. Real strength isn't about maintaining a perfect image, I concluded. It's about having the courage to be authentic, to acknowledge your struggles, and to help others avoid the mistakes you've made. The standing ovation that followed felt like vindication for every moment of doubt, every difficult workout, and every hour spent researching and writing about industry problems that most people preferred to ignore. After the event, as I mingled with attendees who wanted to share their own transformation stories, Tyler Brooks approached me with what appeared to be genuine humility. "I owe you more than an apology," he said. "The party at my house was a turning point for you, but it was also a wake-up call for everyone who was there. We all learned something about ourselves that day, and not all of it was comfortable." He told me about the conversations that had occurred among party guests after my confrontation with Brad, how many people had realized they'd been complicit in a culture that valued appearance over character and entertainment over empathy. "Several of us have made changes in our own lives because of what happened," Tyler continued. "We're more conscious about the messages we support, the businesses we patronize, and the way we talk about health and fitness." The revelation that my humiliation had led to broader self-reflection among the people who witnessed it added another layer of meaning to the entire experience. The cruel laughter that had wounded me so deeply had ultimately forced everyone present to examine their own values and behaviors. As the evening wound down, Jake found me on the hotel's rooftop terrace, looking out at the Austin skyline that had once felt so intimidating and now felt like home. "Are you ready for what comes next?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind in a gesture that had become our signature pose. "I think so," I said, leaning back against his chest and feeling the solid muscle I'd built over 2 years of consistent training. Though I'm not entirely sure what comes next looks like. The certification program was expanding to other states. I had a book contract to write about my experience and the broader issues it represented, and speaking requests were coming in from organizations across the country. The shy marketing coordinator who had been humiliated at a pool party had somehow become a voice for change in an industry that desperately needed reformation. "Whatever it is," Jake said, "it's going to be authentic. That's what you've taught me about real transformation. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming the fullest, strongest version of who you already are." His words captured something essential about the journey I'd completed. I hadn't transformed myself to fit into Brad Thompson's narrow definition of acceptable. I had discovered my own definition of strength, built a community around shared values rather than shared appearance, and learned to use my voice to challenge systems that profited from people's insecurities. The woman who walked away from that hotel that night was fundamentally different from the one who had fled Tyler's party in humiliation 2 years earlier. Not just physically stronger, though the deadlifting and squatting had certainly changed my body in ways that made me feel powerful and capable, but mentally and emotionally transformed in ways that extended far beyond the gym. I had learned that real strength came from facing uncomfortable truths, both about yourself and about the systems you operate within. That authentic transformation required community, support, and sustainable practices, rather than extreme measures and social media validation. That the people who try to diminish you often reveal more about their own insecurities than about your limitations. Most importantly, I had discovered that the cruelest moments in life can become the foundation for the most meaningful growth if you have the courage to transform pain into purpose and humiliation into advocacy for positive change. Brad Thompson's laughter had been intended to diminish me, to reinforce a hierarchy where he held power and I occupied a subordinate position. Instead, it had catalyzed a journey that led to his exposure and downfall, while elevating me to a platform where I could help others avoid the toxic culture he represented. The war that began with his cruel words had ended not with his destruction, but with the construction of something better. A fitness community that valued authenticity over appearance, sustainability over quick fixes, and genuine health over manufactured perfection. As I drove home through the Austin streets I'd once found so intimidating, I reflected on the strange trajectory that had brought me to this point. A moment of public humiliation had become the catalyst for personal transformation, industry reform, and a career dedicated to helping others build healthier relationships with their bodies and their goals. The shy woman who had hidden under a cover-up at a pool party had become someone who stood confidently in front of audiences, sharing her story and advocating for change. The person Brad Thompson had dismissed as lazy and unmotivated had built not just physical strength, but the kind of authentic influence that could reshape an entire industry's approach to health and wellness. His cruelty had backfired in the most spectacular way possible, but the real victory wasn't his downfall. It was the thousands of people who had been inspired to pursue sustainable health practices, the fitness professionals who had committed to ethical training methods, and the community of authentic strength that had grown from the seeds of one woman's determination to prove that she was worth more than anyone's cruel assessment. The laughter that had once echoed in my mind as a symbol of humiliation had been replaced by something far more powerful: the sound of people cheering for real achievements, celebrating genuine progress, and supporting each other's journeys toward authentic strength and sustainable health. Brad Thompson had taught me an invaluable lesson, though not the one he intended. He had shown me that the people who try to tear you down are often the ones who most need tearing down themselves. And sometimes, the best revenge is building something so authentic and meaningful that their shallow cruelty becomes irrelevant by comparison. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.